welcome to another weekly webinar here at Route Consultant, where we're focusing on the bread industry. Now, if you haven't been to one of these before, my name is Josh Gregory. I am the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. And really, all that means for you is that these webinars are here to help you be educated on this new industry. The goal of this is to hopefully teach you a little something new every week, but also to be a place where you can come and ask questions and really find the best ways to help accelerate your journey into the space if you decide bread is where you want to go. We say bread, it's a much broader category than that. You'll often hear us talk about it as grocery. There's a lot of things that fall into it. Bread's just the shorthand we use here to talk about it. Now, if you are here live, we will have a Q&A at the end of this. If you have any questions that come up either as we're talking today or any questions about the industry as a whole, we will have that Q&A at the end. And now, just as a short note, if you do have those questions, please put them in the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. If you put it anywhere else, I'll still see it, but ideally you put it in the Q&A if you want me to answer that question. So for today, like I said, we always want to talk about a little content, give you some updates here. So whether you're looking at buying one of these for the first time or you're already a current contractor in the space, it's really important to know how these businesses are actually valued and then what makes a listing or a business better or worse, worth more or worth less. And so we'll talk through all of that today. And we've brought Stephen Ryan back on to help share his expertise. And for those of you who haven't met Stephen or who haven't seen him on any of these webinars previously, first, those are all on YouTube, so go watch those. But he is a current operator with over a decade of experience in this space. He's worked for different bakeries, he's operated his own vehicles, and he's grown to the size where he doesn't have to be driving all the time and can kind of do things like this and operate at a little bit higher level for those of you interested in that. So we always like having Stephen onto these. So Stephen, if you want to go ahead and jump on and say hello to everybody.
Hey, Josh, great to be back with you.
Perfect. It is always great to have you here as well, Stephen. So as I kind of teed up, the goal of today is kind of talking through how you value in this space. So from what you've seen kind of in your experience, how do you see that these routes are typically valued?
Yes, so as we've talked about before, you're going to, as you walk down the road of purchasing a route, receive a statement that's going to dictate all the stores that you're purchasing within your territory, and that's going to be showing the 52-week average of the sales for each one of these stores. So this is a great way to understand the business that you're buying, whether it's 5, 28 stores, what the territory looks like, and how you're going to make commissions off of that. So you're going to see a wide range of multiples based on a broad spectrum of different variables there. And so that can be anywhere from maybe an 8x multiplier all the way up to 50, depending on the region, depending on the product that you're distributing and how the route is built up, whether it's super centers or it's convenience stores. If you're selling single serve, obviously you have to move a whole lot more units than you would if you're selling bulk packs in a Costco. And so those are, some drivers, but ultimately the market is what sets the price. And so as you're going into these businesses, know that they're going to finance a multiple that is based on the last 3 sales in your area. And so as you think about that huge range, know that you can always ask, what were the average of the last 3 sales in your area? And that will give you a good indicator of what you're buying, how much you're paying for it, and the reasons why maybe the distributor is asking more or less than the average.
Yeah, and yeah, just to be clear, that it's the bakeries that actually do a lot of the financing. We've talked about that, and those multiple ranges you can actually. Oh, did I? Okay, I'm back. You can actually ask the bakeries about those, what Stephen's talking about, the last 3 sales, to get a sense for how those trend. Now, that's going to give you an average, and we're going to talk in a little bit about all of the different ways that an individual business can look better or worse and can be worth more or less. But Stephen, why do you think, this looks a little bit different than some industries? Why do you think the top line revenue is so important in this grocery space in terms of setting the value for these businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're just looking at a P&L and you're seeing, $150,000 in commission, it's hard to know how much workload that really computes to. And so when you look at it at a 52-week sales way, you're looking at store breakdowns and you're able to better understand, what my weekly output is going to be. So you get into premium companies, Pepperidge Farm, their cookie routes are really the cream of the crop. It is not uncommon in very dense areas to see guys making six figures in 30, 32 hours a week. So you need to be there to service your stores, but these are retirement jobs where you can really make great money with less output. You can be gone from your stores longer. It's easier to take vacations than it would be if you're serving restaurants. Cookout has to have hamburger buns like we've talked about before. And so if they have a really heavy weekend that they didn't plan for and they call you on a Sunday, they need you there to make sure that their business is viable. And so those are some of the variables that really go into the multiple and how the market has valued these.
Yeah. And like Steven said at the beginning, it's always going to be market dictated. Multiples have a range so that if it's within that range or not. And the multiple ranges for this space are really going to vary bakery to bakery. And so when you're looking at an individual listing, feel free to kind of come to us, ask us what the range is, and we can go to it. It's less straightforward than when we just say, in something like the FedEx world, hey, the multiple ranges, between a 4 and a 4.5. It's because essentially in a lot of ways, these bakeries trend at different multiples than the others. So it's not just one uniform industry. So we can help you kind of with all of that guidance, as you've seen from us plenty of times in the past. If you've ever looked or talked with us on any side of the business, we analyze hundreds of logistics operations every year. We're analyzing market trends regularly. And our goal in all of this is to continue to present values as accurately as we possibly can and to be really realistic with what a business is worth in the current market and what you can expect from it in the future. So we're always going to try to help you understand in really, apples to apples terms, how these businesses compare and what the right decision is for you. Now, before, Stephen, we get into some of the multiples and some of the things that can make a business more premium, are there any red flags when people are going through this process and trying to find one of these that they should be aware of when they're evaluating opportunities?
Sure, of course, we've talked about before, stale can be a problem if you're not managing your business well. If you're struggling, stale can be a chargeback, and that can really eat into profits. Another red flag might be, we'll get into this as we start talking about contracts, but if you're in a very dense area where the territory line is divided on a major highway, and they just announced that they're building a super center directly across the street from your best store. And so that's going to, cause some competition there that you didn't previously have. So not necessarily a red flag, but some things to be concerned about and maybe think through as you're evaluating that territory. Cash sales can also be another thing, that if it's not driven through the company, if there's not a great track record on that, you want to make sure you understand what you're buying.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what Steven's referring to there is you may encounter a business that not in the ways that they interact with stores, there's some cash that's transacted that there could be some gray areas in terms of how it's properly reported. And so you just need to be really careful about understanding what those look like. Those are going to be at smaller level stores as opposed to like Walmart. But it is very true. Those are some of the things that you can run into. And I think as opposed to, when we've talked about some of the other industries in the past, like FedEx and Amazon, where you really don't control any of the top lines, you don't worry as much about population growth and all of that. You just assume those big companies will handle it. In the bread space, those are real factors to think through how they can impact your business and how, just like you said, a new department store, that competes with, one of your biggest stores can have an impact. At the same time, finding out that they're building a new Walmart in your area, that's a part of your territory, is a great positive coming in the future. So knowing those things can have a big impact on the value you see in the business. And we'll talk about some of that too. The other thing that I always mention when you're talking about other brokers and getting into the space is always be a little bit cautious if you run into a broker that requires you to put a deposit down on a business before they'll tell you anything about it. Like, they won't let you talk to the seller. They won't tell you any info. They say, hey, it's in this area, pay it, put down 10% and we'll tell you more. You want this to be something where the broker you sign an NDA, that's very standard, but there's a lot of information they should give before you ever put any money down. And that should be the standard. It's not always the standard. So I like to kind of let people know that if somebody tells you the standard is to put a bunch of money down before they answer any questions about the business or give you any information, but that is a red flag. Now, so kind of here, Steven, I just want to kind of dig into a little bit. what are some of the things that can make a business more attractive, more premium, and therefore can justify kind of a higher multiple. So we've touched on it in the past, but can you talk a little bit about the quality of stops and what types of stops you'd want to see to kind of justify a higher multiple business? And then if there's any stops that you see, it's kind of a red flag and something that might even pull the multiple down or at least cause question marks.
Sure. Well, like we talked about, not only product but region. So it's a lot more attractive to distribute product in Florida, where you never have to worry about cold weather. You can get up early. You can be done early and off to the golf course. And so that's really attractive to a lot of people. But the product you're selling, the cost of the product, how much product you're selling in each store is really going to dictate your multiple. So if you're selling bulk packs, like I mentioned, at a Costco, a BJ's, a Walmart at $10 a ring, that's a lot different than selling single serve items at 99 cents in a convenience store. And so you'll see a wide range depending on the products you sell, and then also how your commission is calculated. Like I mentioned before, Pepperidge Farm is really the premium brand out there. They're going to pay you a full commission on any product, even when it's on sale. And so that's huge. And that really doesn't that's hard to understand until you've been in the business when you think about how many units you have to handle, as well as shelf life. Obviously, if you're dealing with a fresh product that has, a 7 to 10 day shelf life, like you do with bread, that's going to be a lot different than a cookie cracker pretzel business where you have a 6 or 10-month shelf life on the product. So thinking through how many times you have to handle the unit, once to load the truck, twice to put it in the store, a third time to pull it out if it goes stale, all that slows you down a little bit. And so those are some factors in the product that you're selling as well.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that's hard if you've never been in the space to really, when you're looking at a business for the first time, understand and process. So like I said, we always try to do as much as we can on that side and to be able to bring you that education. But that's why that we have people like Steven, who, if you're looking at one of those businesses and you're trying to figure out, are these good stores? Is this good product? Is this a bakery that I want to be associated with? Understanding all of that. I think the other side of it is, at the end of the day, there are some that are going to trend at a lower multiple, and that's okay as long as you're paying the right price for it. You don't want to pay ultra high premium for a bakery that's not viewed as premium, that has, okay stops, but that is a business you can still make money on as long as you understand what it's worth and you pay the right price for it. That's always the goal here, is you want to get a business that you're paying a fair price for, and that it's operating well from the beginning, and then you can kind of move on from there. But there are businesses that are worth more and less, but they can all make money. You can do really well at all of them. It's just a matter of paying the right price for what's there and what the opportunity is.
Yeah, and so as you think about that, I just thought of another thing, branded products. So if you have a route that is as heavy in restaurants or private label product, that's not necessarily a part of your contract. And so as you grow that business, you can't necessarily ask for value based on something that is not guaranteed within the contract. And so as your business grows, if it's leaning toward private label, if it's growing out of restaurants, that's something that's going to affect your route equity. Conversely, on the Pepperidge Farm side, you're going to see pallet shipments. And so this is a program where they will have bulk pallets built with point of sale, seasonally cross-merchandise product that's going to go straight through the retailer's warehouse, and you're going to pay a pallet fee on that. You never have to touch the product. It is drop shipped on your behalf. You make a commission on that. And so, the value you bring as a distributor is you're there to make sure that gets on the floor. It's there for the amount of time that it's supposed to be, and it stays full. I've seen some stores where the pallet shows up, they leave it in the back room, and they expect you to just work from it and put it on the shelf, and it doesn't work that way. So the retailer the company has bought that space, they've sent it, and they expect it on the floor. And so we're there to represent them and make sure their interests are covered and the product is represented to the end user.
And have you encountered that or heard of anyone else besides Pepperidge doing that? Or is it how common are those programs?
Not super common. Pepperidge Farm is one of the few that still does it, but you will see some cross-docked pallets with Snyder's Lance. Those are the two that I can think of right now.
Yeah. And do you do you find those are on, all of the contracts, or only certain contracts that have those? And is there any way to, how easy is that to find out in advance? Is it just a question of the seller?
Yeah, the pallet programs are really going to be limited to your extended shelf life products. So your cookies, your crackers, your chips. Can't easily do that with a fresh bakery product like bread. But it is going to be in the contract. You're going to understand pallet drops, and you're going to understand how you get paid on those. On the Pepperidge Farm bread side, that includes the stuffing business. So Pepperidge Farm is owned by Campbell Soup, and they really do a great job as a parent company. When you go to buy chicken broth, on the back there, it calls for Pepperidge Farm branded stuffing when you're making stuffing at Thanksgiving. And so that's a huge driver for us in the business. And going back to, why understanding your 52-week average is important, because it includes those highs, those seasonally driven promotions, as well as those, slower weeks, like right after Thanksgiving when everybody's eating leftovers and shopping for Christmas. And so you have a good idea of what the business does on a yearly basis.
Okay, perfect. And I know that some businesses do a little bit better job than others about giving detail on those 52-week averages, but is that something that everybody should, expect to be able to find in the process from whatever bakery they're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Without there's really no starting point to understand, what you're buying, how much commissions you're going to make out of each store, and how you're going to build these routes and ultimately sell them.
Perfect. Now, just kind of the last point on the multiple side, when you're thinking about growth, besides just being aware of new stores that are about to open, what kinds of things would you do if you're thinking about evaluating a territory for how much it could grow in the future?
Great question. I would really start with my goals. And so where do I want to be in 10 years? Am I building this to split it, to retain it? Am I going to sell it? And once you establish that, you can better, dive into the route that's going to fit your goals. Obviously, a smaller multiple, you're going to have a lower entry point. It's easier to get into, get the cash flowing, but a higher multiple, as you grow, that route value is exponentially more. If you grow a route $10,000 a week at a 30 multiple, that's a lot different than one at a 10. And so understanding, are you in this to build and sell, to build and split, to hold, can really help you kind of direct where you want those resources to go and make a plan for your money.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You think about it, if there's a space that you're buying into that's at a higher multiple, yes, the entry point is higher, but you're exactly right. If your plan is to continue to build, your equity is also growing at that higher multiple. And assuming, there's always those ones that are the more premium are also the ones that have the higher chance of that multiple growing. So not only are you growing the base that the multiple will sell at, but potentially growing that multiple rate as well. And so it's one of those things where you're exactly right. Thinking about your plans and goals in advance are really going to help dictate how you think about growth and what that trajectory looks like. So one of the other parts that we always kind of include as part of the value that's an important piece of this is the truck. But I know not all of these come with the truck. How important would you say it is to have a vehicle included versus being able to source your own as a part of it?
Sure. Yeah, trucks are pretty easy. So if a guy is selling the business outright, he's, leaving one route, it's easy to include that truck as a part of the sale. If it's a box truck, obviously, if he's towing a trailer and he has his personal truck, that might be a little different. But if he's splitting a route, it's not uncommon for a truck not to come with these businesses. But they're very easy to acquire, as we've talked about in the past on different webinars. Commercial Truck Trader, Penske used trucks, U-Haul used trucks, or truck and trailer is a great option to operate these and really not a problem.
Yeah, and if you come from like the FedEx side of things where you're used to really evaluating that fleet, it's not that you shouldn't evaluate fleets that are part of the sale, but there's more trucks needed to generate this amount of revenue on the FedEx side than you will for these. There's also significantly fewer requirements. The mileage is a lot less. So even if there's no truck included, it's pretty easy, like Steven's saying, to find a truck because it doesn't have to be brand new. Really, you're just trying to get to your 10 stops, let's say, in a day, deliver that and be done. There's not a lot of accidents, not a lot of technology that you need, so you can run a truck a lot longer. And that, while the truck has value in a sale, it's not something that's should be a deal breaker if you see a listing without a truck. It just means that that's, an additional capital that you need to plan for as a part of starting up your business, but it is pretty easy to source. So the last thing just to kind of think through here, Stephen, is I know that sometimes you may see businesses that are distressed bread routes. Is that something, how easy is it to find those? How easy is it even to know that it's distressed? And then how difficult is it to turn one of those around?
Sure. Yeah, this is a fair point and something to consider as you're evaluating businesses. Owner operators get burned out. And so over the years, whether it be personal circumstances or just doing the same thing over and over again, it can affect the business. And I wouldn't be too concerned if you have a solid business with good stores, low mileage. If the stores are trending down for reasons that you can understand, do your due diligence, go in on a Sunday, go in on a Wednesday night, see what the shelf conditions look like. If it's purely a service problem, you can really get in, you can turn the tide quickly, and you can make a difference. And also look at the area. So, any given area may have 5, 10, 15 routes all operated by different independents, and look at the regional average. So that'll give you an idea what the average growth is in the area and how this route is stacking up. And then try and narrow into, if it's not performing as well, why that is. And so as you do your due diligence, that will help you understand if this is distressed because the owner is burned out or if there are some other factors that you need to be concerned about.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where, in particular, if you're a new operator trying to get one of those, if you don't really know what you're walking into, we can either help you find those problems and solve them, or like I've said before, there's ways you can work with Stephen directly, even after you take over the business, to have him walk beside you and solve those problems with you. Now, do bakeries ever, if let's say they have either a really distressed operation and let's say even the owner has walked away, how does a bakery find someone new to help them operate one of those?
Sure, it happens. It's rare, but there are circumstances where someone just disappears and they decide this isn't for them anymore. And so one of two things will happen. Either the company will take it back over and list it for sale, or they will have adjoining independents cover the territory. So if there's 10 stores, you might have the guy on the east side of the territory cover 5 and the guy on the west side cover 5 until that can be sold. If it's a company route, that's going to be listed on the listing, but that's fairly rare. There's a good amount of money tied up in these, and so you don't often find someone that just decides to walk away from that. And so that's a great way the companies have solid workforce. Once you get a guy invested in the product, invested in the company, that you have stability in the grocery business.
Yeah. So there, if you're looking at buying one of these, there won't be there's no giant list of an infinite number of opportunities on the bakery website that you're going to be pulling from. But there are some distressed operators. There are sometimes you'll see a listing where an owner's either just decided to get out, or maybe it's health reasons that he has to sell more quickly. So you will see those come up. We've had a couple that have come through our site. So the important thing, like we've talked about here, is if you see those come up, just make sure you kind of work with us and help and understand what the challenges are, so that you'll know if it's something that it's achievable for you to fix. Because sometimes just because it's cheap doesn't mean that there won't be expensive problems for you to solve. So as long as you're aware of those and have kind of understood the opportunity, then you'll understand the value and decide if it's the right fit for you. So I think that's the end of what I wanted to talk about and cover here today. So I've got a reminder of a few things, and while I'm saying it, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to type them in. But for just as a reminder for everybody, there are a few ways if you're trying to learn more about this space that we're going to continue to provide. The first is always this webinar. We're going to be here every week at this time, so you can come and hear from Stephen and I about different aspects of the space. And even if you miss one, or if you're trying to catch up, they'll all be on our YouTube, so you can go and watch those for free at any time. We also have a Bread 101 on our website that if you're just trying to get a quick crash course on kind of an overview of the space, we have that for free as well. And then soon we will have a new investor summit designed just for bread, and then a couple of other products as well. So like if you're going and trying to find the right opportunity in this space, to work with us to find an opportunity, evaluate it, whether it's through our brokerage or not, we have ways that you can work with us on that. We also have ways you can work with Stephen as you take over a business to find the right, to solve problems daily and figure out, what are the right ways to handle, whatever product you're dealing with, whatever challenge you're dealing with from a bakery. You can work with Stephen and our team each week. Now, quick question from Philip. Are the multiples typically based on EBITDA? And actually in this space, we usually see that the multiples are based on a multiple of weekly revenue. So that's why we're really emphasizing that weekly revenue number. You'll still look at EBITDA. I think it's worth digging into as you're evaluating a business, but these are all typically just looking at a multiple that's defined as the amount of weekly revenue that business is doing. And then those multiple ranges, like we've said, are market defined, but you can get a really good sense of the average by looking at individual bakeries and looking at the last 3 sales, and they'll always have that number that we can share with you too. So there will be businesses that fall below and above that range based on all those reasons we talked about today, but it is based on weekly averages of revenue in this space. Okay, so that's the last question I'm seeing here. Again, if you have any questions on either one of these opportunities or any opportunity in the space, you're just trying to, maybe you have something that doesn't quite fit into anything we've talked about before, you can always reach out to info@routeconsultant.com. Send us your question and we'll make sure to get you in the right place. But other than that, Stephen, thank you so much for being here today and answering everyone's questions. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Josh. See you guys next week.
Perfect. And thanks all of you for joining. And like Stephen said, hopefully we will see you next week and every week again. And this is great to have you here. So see you guys.